afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our inaugural Salon event here in our vibrant new community, online and in the Dementia Researcher Communities app. Inspired by intellectual gatherings of the 17th and 18th century Paris, our salons aim to merge the traditional charm of spirited discussion with modern-day interactivity and inclusiveness, delivering what I hope is something a little bit different to the usual webinars that we've become so accustomed to and familiar with over the last few years, particularly since the pandemic. And there's Leah. She said she can see us all. Thank you very much, Leah, for joining us. Today we address a topic. So before that, I'm Madam Smith. I'm the Program Director for Dementia Researcher, and today I'll be your host, Salon. I was thinking about this. I can't be here every week on a Wednesday. I mean, as much as I'm going to try. So if anybody's interested in also playing a role and hosting one of our future salon sessions, please do have a look through the list of events and let me know if you'd be interested in doing that. But for now, today we address a topic of critical importance and urgency: tackling sexism in academia. The issue touches the core of our institutions by challenging the fairness and equality of opportunities afforded to everyone, regardless of gender. And despite policy advancements, women continue to face significant barriers, from unequal pay to underrepresentation in leadership roles. And our own work also shows that more than half of women researchers have experienced sexism in their everyday work, from microaggressions to misogyny and more. So I think it's important that topics like this be some of the very first that we explore in the salon, because they're incredibly important. And I'll move to the next page of my notes. Today, I have the pleasure of being joined by two incredible guests and speakers who are going to bring their rich experiences and unique perspectives. First, we have Dr. Georgina Menzies, a computational biologist and lecturer from Cardiff University, known for her work in DNA repair and neurodegeneration. Hello, Georgina.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you. Next, we have Soumilee Chaudhuri, a doctoral candidate at Indiana University, whose research spans Alzheimer's disease across multi-ethnic populations. Hi, Soumilee.
Hello, very excited to be here.
I suddenly realized that it's 12. If it's 12 noon in the UK, it's incredibly early for you. Where, assuming you're in Indiana right now, I'm sorry if we've made you get up.
No, it's 7 a.m. It's perfect.
That's not too bad. So thank you both for joining us. Let me quickly explain the program for those who are watching. Our two guests have both been given a completely free mandate to present and talk about whatever they like on this topic. They'll each have 10 minutes to talk, and then I'm going to follow up with a few questions of my own. And then we're going to turn off our cameras and microphones and move into the live chat, where we hope that you'll be inspired to share your own experiences of this topic, to ask questions of our guests, and to chat about that. We want to hear your thoughts and engage in a meaningful dialogue. So stick around and share your thoughts at the end. And I've got this quote at the end. You know, when these things always look better written down than they do read out loud. So let's begin this journey with an open mind, a respectful tone, and a commitment to drive change. Thank you very much. That's enough from me. Georgina, I think you very kindly agreed to talk first.
Yeah.
So Soumilee and I will turn our cameras off, and you can share your screen, and we'll watch your talk.
Great. Thank you very much. That was a really great introduction. I'm going to attempt to share my screen. Can everybody? Yes, hopefully you can see my slides.
We can.
Brilliant. So thank you so much for inviting me to talk about this today. I think it's a really, really important topic. And before we really get into this, I just wanted to touch on something that's been reported on recently. And this was an article in the Times Higher Education based on some recently published research data, and showing how this topic is still incredibly important today, even though we're in 2024. And this article highlighted that it takes almost 15 years longer for women to progress to full professorships in UK universities than it does their male counterparts. Now, 15 years is an awful long time. And you could argue that many, but not all, female academics may take maternity or adoption leave during their career, but this doesn't equate to 15 years. And I think it's clear that sexism plays an important role in this deficit, and is still something that we need to be thinking about and addressing. So, with that in mind, today I'd like to talk to you about some facts and things from published research, because after all, a lot of us will be scientists. We're interested in the facts and what's really happening. But also I'm going to give you some of my own personal experiences and end with some things that I think that we can think about and perhaps discuss in the chat afterwards. Now, I can, of course, only give you experiences from my own point of view, and I think this is a very important caveat. All of these experiences and points of view that I've had through my career will really impact and influence on how I feel about sexism in academia. And it's important to acknowledge that everybody's experiences will be different, and however you felt personally in a situation is valid, no matter what somebody else felt about that situation. Something I may perceive as sexism may not appear that way to you, but that doesn't mean that I'm wrong. That doesn't mean that my perception is wrong, or that it doesn't exist or didn't happen. I hope this makes sense, but I just sort of wanted to start by saying my point is that we should be kind to each other and acknowledge and validate people's experiences. So to that end, I'm Georgina. I'm currently a lecturer in Cardiff University. I'm a computational biologist. And on my research career, I actually started with a BSc in forensic science, which is a random place to start to get here today. Considering currently I research the impact of mutations and DNA. I did my MSc, then my PhD studying the structure of DNA. I have 3 postdocs, then a fellowship before I get to my lectureship. And all these experiences are going to impact on my talk today. Now, what about the facts? Well, a quick Google search will show you that even very recently, within the last 3 years, there has still been an awful lot of publications and articles within the science realm discussing these gender biases in academia and how important they are. So just, you know, we're in 2024 and this topic is still huge, despite this bias being known and spoken about for many years. And we are getting better with some respects, but there is so much more that we need to do. If for no other reason that the underlying bias, any underlying biases that exist, prevent us from doing the best scientific research that we can do. Now, for most of us will be in, or perhaps all of us, in fact, will be in Alzheimer's research. This is a really important field. Why wouldn't we want to do the best possible research that we could do for those suffering with Alzheimer's disease? And if we can prevent a lot of these biases from happening, including sexism, then, you know, we can make our scientific research better, and surely that's incredibly important. So let's start with some figures. Now, this figure is taken from the publication link to the article that I mentioned to you in my first slide. Now, here they looked at numbers of academic staff being promoted across Russell Group universities from 2005 up to 2019. The solid lines represent those that identify as male, and the dotted lines those that identify as females. Now you can see there's quite a difference between those solid lines and the dotted lines, so the number of people being promoted to female professor versus the male professors. For those of you maybe unaware, Russell Group universities are research-intensive universities in the UK, so that's where this data came from. There are 24 of them, and their number includes Cardiff University, where I am, Liverpool University, King's, Cambridge, Oxford, etc. Now we can see upward trends in the number of females being promoted, but we're almost 20 years post the induction of things like the Athena Salon charters. Shouldn't we be doing an awful lot better than just an upward trend in 20 years? So for anyone unaware of Athena Swan, this was first established in 2005 to encourage and recognise commitment to advancing the careers of women in science, technology, engineering and maths, or medicine, sorry. It's now being used across the globe to address gender equality more broadly, and not just barriers to progression that affect women alone. But that's 20 years this charter has been established for. Universities have had to sign up and say that they acknowledge this charter and they're doing their best to level this playing field, but we're still nowhere near at an equal footing in this promotion track. Now, many of you may also have heard people talk about something called the leaky pipeline, and this is data that was taken from across the European Union in 2021. The percentages of women entering bachelor's and master's degrees or graduating from those is far higher than their male counterparts. But if you get to the other end of the spectrum and you look at heads of universities or heads of boards of research organisations, the percentages of male to female completely flips incredibly strongly. So at some point during this academic tract, either people are leaving academia or they're not being promoted as highly as their male counterparts. So this is sexism really strongly is still existing in this. I also read a few qualitative research papers about this, and I just wanted to highlight this one and the reference there if you want to go and have a look. So this researcher interviewed a whole bunch of people and asked them about their experiences with sexism. And this one stood out to me because this is something that I have experienced myself. This female postdoc at a university was helping to organise an event along with a male counterpart. And when she organised this event, she was hanging out with the students at the event, and all of the first thing that they asked her was, does she have a part-time job at the university? Like, is she just the event organiser? And she had to explain to them that, she's a postdoc the same as her male counterpart. And this assumption that women maybe are organising events but not actually carrying out science is something that lots of us experience and is really, can be really degrading when you hear these things over and over again. Now, in the last few minutes, I just want to share some of my own personal experiences with you. Just to repeat, these are experiences that I have had, and that doesn't mean that other people in the same situation wouldn't have perceived these differently, but these are things that have happened to me, and to be honest, I could have given you many more. These individually may not seem like much, but they add up over time and perhaps contribute to the 15-year gap between promotion to professorial level. So I have been in meetings, and I was in one recently. There were 9 men in the room and 2 women. We were asked at the end to give our thoughts on the meeting topic and how we can see this progressing. I was one of the people that gave my thoughts on how we could progress and how we could make this topic better. As soon as I finished giving my thoughts on this, and it's a very small room, like there's only 11 of us in there, and so everybody heard me, there was no doubt about that. One of my male counterparts then repeated my idea almost exactly and claimed it as his own, saying that he had been thinking about it for a long time. And that's true, he may have been thinking about it, but he could have said it first. If he's been thinking about it for a long time, he could have said it a long time ago. And he could have, in fact, just acknowledged that he had the same idea as me and not just repeated it as a new idea. Many women are often given the organisational or administrative tasks. I've been in board meetings where I am one of several module leaders, so at the same status as everybody else. If I've been the only female module leader in the room, I've been asked if I would be willing to take minutes of the meeting because I am very good at it. I have responded sometimes to that and told people that, if I'm very good at it, maybe you need to practice, so why don't you have a shot this time? But it's another thing that often gets put upon female academics. And it's not just taking the minutes in the meeting. I would then have had to have gone away and written those up and sent them around and asked people to check them. These tasks add up. And finally, just the language used. I am often told that I am bossy in work, and I think personally that is not a term that is often used with my male counterparts. I would much prefer that people commented on how many good ideas I had or my great leadership skills rather than calling me bossy. And just to leave you with a few thoughts, what does sexism in academia mean to me? Well, it can be subtle, undetected. It comes from unconscious biases or people not just thinking. We're talking about those small microaggressions that just add up. It can be subtle, and we all need to be allies to stop it. And I just wonder if you can think of anything you've been witness to, and were you a really good ally to that person at the time? Or how do you think you could have been, or what would you change in the future? I just want to leave you with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I think, well, I've got lots of questions, but I'm going to save them for the end. This is fresh in my mind because we did as dementia researcher and as iStart, we did a big survey about 2 years ago and asked questions about how people experienced sexism. And we've been working on a paper for a long time since. It's been very, very delayed in getting done, mostly due to my not getting around to doing it. But I was just working on it yesterday because my colleagues were prompting me to say, come on, what's going on with this? So this is all very fresh in my mind as well. And so much of what you've said is going to be in that paper. So watch this space. Soumilee, would you like to deliver your talk now? Thank you. We can see that.
Cool. Can you hear me too?
We can.
Okay, cool. Hello, everyone. My name is Soumilee. There's a hidden H in my name here. And I am currently a rising fourth-year PhD candidate at Indiana Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. My research focuses on understanding vascular risk factors in Alzheimer's disease, especially in a multi-ethnic population. And today I'm here to share some of my perspectives as an early career trainee in academia, especially about sexism and intersectional sexism. So like the first thing that I would actually like to talk about is this recent study that was published that talked about how tenure track women are at parity with tenure track men on several measures in academia. This study was really interesting, but this made me think that there is an entire missing generation of early career trainees that are not accounted for in this study. So going back to Dr. Menzies' talk, the leaky pipeline, there are some early career women who drop out at various points in academia who never even reach that tenure track part where they are being collected data from to show if sexism exists or not. So there is this entire missing generation of early career trainees that we never hear from, that we never hear what happened to them or why they left. And some of the reason that happens is what I call the, oh, he definitely did not mean it. And you have it so good here, you've no idea why spoil it by complaining mentality. That is, when you face something and you feel what you feel in a situation, you're not validated. You're often gaslighted, and this comes from other senior women trainees who have faced far harsher conditions than you have, but have sometimes internalized it. So there is a lack of solidarity from female counterparts, and some of this comes from the competitiveness that inherently exists between women in academia, where we pity women against women. And this is called the scarcity mentality. And this is very prevalent. And this is one of the main reasons there is lack of solidarity. And the third thing, and this is my favorite because I drink it every day, I call it the sexism smoothie. You just add a dash of racism to it. It is actually pretty bitter, and I have to drink it every day almost as a woman of color and as an international scholar. And that is to say that several studies have shown that female ethnic minorities often need to decide which battle to fight racism or sexism? Most times they end up fighting none because of reporting bias and harassment. And this is a tough choice that women of color have to face and make on a daily basis. So discussing the first, recent study that I talked about, this is directly from that study published in 2023. This says that tenure-track women are at parity with tenure-track men in 3 domains: grant funding, journal acceptances, and recommendation letters, and are advantaged over men in 4th domain, hiring. But for teaching ratings and salaries, they found evidence that there is bias against women. So there are 3 domains where women are actually at par with men, tenure-track women, and 1 domain where women actually outshine men. And for teaching ratings and salary, there is bias against women. And again, going back to my very first point is there is an entire generation of early career female trainees that we are missing when we are when we're looking at studies like that. Because what about the non-tenure track faculty? What about that postdoc who's trying to get a faculty position? What about PhD students who are currently thinking if or not to stay in academia due to these kind of experiences? What about the undergrads, research techs, or the postbac students who are currently thinking if a PhD is worth doing, if being in academia is worth? So studies like this show us what the gap is. But again, one of the gap is the sample not included in the study. Also, one of the biggest findings from the study was women are actually doing better in hiring, like institutions hire more women. And that is one of the things that many other studies have pointed at, that some hiring policies and actions that are in place to tackle sexism are inherently performative. So these performative policies ensure that there is inclusion, but there needs to be a cultural shift that says that, okay, we're not just going to stop at inclusion. We're going to continue with retention. So you not just hire more women, you actively make an effort to keep them in the pipeline so that they actually end up as tenure track faculty and become full professors. So there needs to be a full pipeline of not just inclusion, but retention, not just performative actions and policies, but a cultural shift in that. Some of the reasons that this leaky pipeline happen, and women do not feel validated, they drop out early on in academia, and that is because there is huge gaslighting during this process. I have been told at multiple points in my career that it was not okay to voice my concern and not okay to feel what I felt. And there is a huge emotional mistreatment that comes along with sexism. It is very hard to document, and it is very hard to report because there is lack of support from bystanders who might be dismissive, yet empathetic, or just unempathetic. And some of these can be women in the same environment that you're at. Some of these can be men. But because sexism and the ways it can be portrayed, it doesn't need to be overt. It is often very passive and hard to document. Going back to my personal account, I have been explicitly told in certain environments that opening my mouth has consequences, and that standing up for myself could actually have professional repercussions. And being said that to me, like, I am in my 7th year in academia, 4 years of undergrad, and finishing my 3rd year as a PhD student, it is extremely disheartening to hear that. And it actually took me a long time before someone else from a different industry came and told me that this was not sign of a healthy workspace, and that this wouldn't happen in a healthy workspace, and this is not normal, that opening your mouth, voicing your concern does not result in professional repercussions in a healthy workspace. And my last point, which is the sexism smoothie. And this, again, is one of my favorite studies by Tracy Owens Patton. It says that ethnic minority women are often put into a bind. She calls it the double bind, particularly within discussions of race and gender that is produced because does a woman fight against sexism or racism? Is it possible to fight against both successfully? Or often one issue is prioritized over the other. So I call it the pancake stacking effect. Is it's like a stack of pancakes, but like your pancakes are not really nice pancakes, they're barriers. So you're young, you're a woman, you are a woman of color, you're an international scholar, maybe English is not your first language, so your challenges multiply, and that increases how much sexism you might have to endure. That increases how you're gonna respond to sexism or misogyny or racism. So these are some of my experiences that I draw from in academia so far. And these are some of the readings and references that I cited. I would highly recommend you go and read these authors because they're extremely insightful. So to leave you with some final thoughts, I will go back to my first slide. And that is, know that there is an entirely missing generation of early career trainees due to a leaky pipeline that we never hear from. Know that gaslighting exists, and often it is perpetrated by female counterparts who have internalized that misogyny, and that is because academia inherently pits women against women. And again, remember and be mindful that some of your female friends who are ethnic minorities often need to decide which battle to fight, racism or sexism, because sometimes it is hard to choose and to fight that battle. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And two wonderful talks on, and I mean, it's great that we've got that. I love how you both brought in your own experiences as well, which obviously they're not good experiences, but you brought your experiences and the papers to back that up. So let's now, we're just gonna have a chat for 5 minutes, and I've got some questions before we go to questions. We're running a little bit behind, but please do, audience, stay with us because we want your views on this topic as well. So we at Dementia Research published a blog a little while ago by Dr. Yvonne Couch, who's one of our regular contributors from Oxford. And this followed a conversation that we both had. And this was after Alzheimer's Research UK published a report that showed that, I can't remember the exact number, so apologies for this. I'll find it out before we publish the show notes. So something like 70% of early career researchers were women now. However, of course, that the gap that you've both mentioned, that going from early career researcher to senior position is where the big gap is. In fact, there's a stat, I think something like only 24% of senior academic positions are filled by women compared to overall 45% of the workforce, which is higher in academia. And what were the solutions to this? And we seem to be in a position at the moment where the approach we're taking is to overwhelm the system with more women early career researchers, and hope that eventually, if you have enough more women coming in, that they'll get there. I mean, that's just not, if we do that it will, I think Yvonne did the stats for this. I think it works out that something like it will take at least 20 years to get to where we're at, where to have that senior academic parity, which is not then the right approach. We need to do more at that mid-career stage to help people. So this is a question for you. How can institutions more effectively implement and enforce policies that promote gender equality? As you mentioned, we've had Athena Swan for a long time. It's certainly not helped, but it's clearly not having the drive that we'd hope in as quickly as we'd like. So what policies could we have more of? Georgina, would you like to go first?
That's really tricky. I think Athena Swan was a very good thing, and I don't know what you guys have over in America if you have similar things. So it is important that universities have signed up for that. But sometimes it feels like we're just ticking some boxes. So if the universities are all having to say we've employed so many women or we've promoted so many women, how has that happened? What are the policies that have been put in place, or the cultural changes? If we can't define what those are, then we're just maybe ticking some boxes and we're not really achieving equality. So the actual policies, I don't know what the answers are. Soumilee, I think your talk about women often being the people who aren't supportive or don't validate how you feel about encounters or sexism or racism that you may have experienced is really important. And perhaps we need to be focusing more on how all of us are better mentors and allies across the board. And maybe in the policies, in promoting people, there needs to be more done to show, like, if you are a very good mentor and if you're supporting all of your other trainees, no matter who they are, maybe that needs to count for promotions. So maybe we need to be looking at the roles that women are taking on and making them stand more in promotion. I don't know.
Yeah, I completely agree. You made the point. Well, I think, correct me if I'm wrong. Did you made the point that sometimes the sexism didn't seem deliberate? It was just not faultlessness.
Yeah.
And you almost kind of think that there just needs to be in some instances, just having that check, because the number of conference organizers I've come across who've suddenly, there's been outrage because they've organized all male panels and things, which we've seen too often of, didn't do that on purpose, but they just didn't look, they just didn't think.
Yeah.
And they're just almost like on every policy, you just want somewhere to say, can we just check? Can we just check that we're not, that this isn't continuing to confound some of the challenges that we face around the problems of sexism? What do you think, Soumilee?
Yeah, I think there has been an overwhelming influx of early career trainees because of these policies in place, both, especially in the Western countries, North America, as well as the UK. But the problem is, are there equipped mentors in academia to tackle these early career trainees? So I have had multiple situations personally and also with my friends where, they have been accepted into these amazing programs, these Ivy League programs, and they see that their advisor has like 5 other PhD students, and they are suddenly like, what is going on? Like, I don't know how I'm going to get that mentorship in this environment, because there is a push on acceptance, but there not necessarily is a push on having more one-on-one time, getting that direct mentorship with that mentor. And I feel like sometimes the mentors we have are, at least in the United States, it's so you have to be so focused on grant funding and getting that money. Mentorship can be sidelined, which sometimes it can be really hard to focus on your mentees. So if you have a lot of them, it becomes incredibly higher. You tend to like neglect them. I wouldn't call it neglect, but it's just absenteeism. Like, you just forget about them because it's not the priority. So I feel like we're also not training mentors, be it female or male, giving them enough time to tackle this overwhelming influx of early career trainees. And that is something that institutionally we could work on, that administrations could give a push. But given the huge amount of push in grant funding, I do see that mentoring has taken a step back, that institutions aren't pushing as much they should in equipping mentors to be better mentors.
Well, or even any training. I've been involved in setting up a mentoring program recently, and I think it was like almost it wasn't an afterthought. I raised it and said, are we gonna, we've gone to all this trouble to organize these pairings, and people have been brilliant in volunteering to be mentors, but has anybody actually given them some instructions? And it's like, oh, sure, we found something off the internet, we'll send them a link. Yeah, read this. This is what you should do for mentoring. But I think bringing Yvonne up again, actually, because Yvonne's written on this as well, is that whole PI training piece about this expectation that you reach a certain stage and you just slide into it without any extra training or support. So that's something institutions could do, isn't it? Is to deliver more training, but what they do then make sure that sexism is part of that, because as we've heard from both your talks, this isn't one thing. This isn't just not getting promotions. This is how you're treated in meetings. This is what response you get to grants. This is citations. And there was another thing in the AOU. Sorry.
Maybe more unconscious bias training, because it's not just sexism that's important. There are lots of different things that are really important and unconscious biases that we hold. I did notice that one of the audience put their hand up. Is there a way of allowing them to ask a question?
No, there isn't. Sorry, we're getting used to this. But Leah, okay. We're going to move into the chat, surely.
Yeah, she could. Maybe Leah, you could ask it in the chat, I guess.
There was one stat. So in the survey we did a while ago now that we're going to repeat this year, we asked how helpful employers and institutions had been if issues had been raised. And of course, as you both mentioned, there's a lot of pushback to suggest, you know, maybe don't raise these, but only 3.3% of respondents found their institution extremely helpful. 9.3% very helpful. Somewhat helpful was 30%, and the rest, so that's over 58%, found them not helpful or very unhelpful. So that speaks volumes, really. Is there any final points you'd like to make on the live stream? I did have a question, which we'll have one more question, which is, let's see, I printed off, I thought of in advance of the questions that I would raise in this. What shall I pick on here? What can people do? What can our our listeners? I'm so used to recording podcasts. What do you think early career researchers themselves can do? I mean, obviously, men to be allies. I guess it speaks volumes that our audience are mostly women. I don't know what to take away from that. I'm hoping that there are more men watching this on Watchback, because these are important topics to you that you should be aware of. Because wait, I was going to say you're the problem, because it is an issue, and I'm not going to say you're the problem, but you should be here watching. I'm going to show Georgina. What more can people do?
Yeah, I think it's something that we've both raised, in that validate whoever tells you that they've experienced some kind of discrimination or something that has made them uncomfortable. The first thing you have to do is say something like, I'm sorry that happened to you, not, oh, I don't think that really happened, or they didn't mean it like that, or it should be, I'm sorry that happened. What could we do? What can I do to help you? What can I do to support you?
And that's women to women as well, isn't it?
It's everybody. And it's it's everybody. It's absolutely everybody. And at all different levels as well, like from just your peers all the way up.
Soumilee.
Yeah, I've been fortunate enough to find a woman mentor who is more senior in rank than me, and I think she does a great job at giving me options if I go to her with things like this. And she's been very kind enough to say, okay, this is what happened to you. This is very real. And you have to know, given what environment we are in right now, you could do two things. Know that in one scenario, the actions you take, given the environment we are, might have consequences. Or you could do the second thing and try to work past it. And I think she does a great job at telling you the truth, but also telling you that in case you take a step, what kind of consequences you might face. And I think that's important, because she's not just validating my feelings, she's giving me options. She's telling me she has been in my shoes, and she's telling me what is real, what could happen, but also what else could I do? How else could I mitigate this problem?
Do you think whistleblowing works because people can have anonymity, but at other areas there's this kind of in manufacturing and things like this, they have these kind of blame or no blame culture. If you see a problem, point it out, and that's the only way that things get highlighted and talked about. do you think that one of the reasons why, obviously, you've been discouraged perhaps from raising sexism when you've experienced it, or that this isn't talked about so much with things like the academic housework, because you couldn't call out and say, hey, am I being asked to do this because I'm the woman in the room? Do you think if we had a more transparent openness and willingness to just to point this out when it happens, not in a way that's to say, hey, the person chairing this meeting, you're an awful sexist, because you probably don't want, I don't know, you might want to raise that, but would that help?
I think part of the problem with academia is that lots of people are on temporary contracts or are PhD candidates who are wholly reliant on the work environment that they're in, and that it's really hard to raise those points when you have a temporary contract and you don't know how you're going to pay your rent if you lose your job.
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? We can talk about it as much as we like, and then yes. I mean, I remember one of my mentors on a separate issue saying, "Oh, just raise it as raise it in a way that's a joke and not it wasn't a sexist message." You're going, well, yeah, but that's not really what you want to do, is it? I think we're going to call the live stream part of this to a close now. Thank you so much to Georgina and Soumilee for your talks. Did I write a bit for the end? I didn't. I'm just going to wing this bit. Thank you so much for both of your talks. What we're going to do now is, this is still our first ever salon, so thank you so much for everybody for watching. What we're going to do now is all three of us are going to turn our cameras and microphones off, mute ourselves. There'll be potentially some music and some slides rotating in the background while we move into the chat and continue this conversation. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining. And I hope you'll come back. And if you do have a question and you're watching this on Catch Up, Georgina and Soumilee will be reviewing the comments afterwards and can respond to questions and things. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
We should float. We've all got our t-shirts on as well. Thank you. Did yours arrive in time? I'm so pleased it hadn't arrived. Thank you so much. Let's go on to the chat now.